Hi, friends. For those of you who are joining in, can you just let me know whether I'm audible and I'm visible? And let me also welcome the viewers on Facebook Live to the session on permaculture and weeds. I would just like to know whether I'm audible and I'm visible. If you can just write that, it'll be really nice. Okay, so I'm audible and visible. So I think people will start joining as the webinar progresses. But the best thing about the webinar is definitely the fact that you can watch it later also. So this thing is going to be recorded, and the same video is going to be available to all of you once this presentation ends. But if you are sticking with the webinar, you will have a chance of asking me questions. So a warm welcome to all of you to the session 1 on permaculture and weeds. There are going to be 2 sessions. This is the session first. I'll be announcing the date for the second session pretty soon, maybe by the end of today. And so make sure that you watch both the sessions because weeds is a really interesting topic. And for those of you who are even new to permaculture, you'll find the way in which we look at weeds in permaculture is really special. Actually, the way in which we look at anything in permaculture is special. So a couple of pointers. First is that if you have not seen my previous YouTube live session on Introduction to Permaculture, or even the one which I did 2 years back, I would really urge you to watch that because there is a lot to permaculture, and not that if you I mean if you haven't watched that before and you're just joining for this session to understand more about permaculture, definitely what I'm going to be telling you is going to make a lot of sense even to those who are new to permaculture. However, once this presentation ends, it would be really good if you watch my other presentation also, because a lot of things were explained in a lot of detail there. And probably today we might not be having that kind of time to go into each thing in detail. So one is that. The second is that today at 3 p.m., there is going to be another webinar by Dwarkanath Naneshwar, DJ, on permaculture and society. And that is going to be at 3 o'clock. That's also going to be a YouTube live webinar. So do join that. That is going to be in Telugu. So for Telugu speaking audiences, definitely do get on to that. As usual, there'll be lots and lots of Q&As which DJ will be handling. So for all of you that who are trying to understand what permaculture is, the more you listen to such sessions, the better idea you start getting about what permaculture is, because it's very difficult to define permaculture in one word or one sentence. Usually, introduction to permaculture sessions run almost for 1 to 2 days before people can start appreciating what permaculture is. So do join that at 3 p.m. Thirdly, what I'm going to be talking today about permaculture and weeds is what I have learned in my PDC, which I did under Dwarkanath Jnaneshwar, DJ. And it's also based on some of the other interactions that I've had with him. So with all these things said, let's all start permaculture and weed session 1. And Last video, last time when I was doing the YouTube live session, and if you're a part of it, we were discussing about permaculture. We were looking into it in great depth, so to say. And there are a couple of things which I wanted to share that day, but because of the internet connection and all that, I could not really do that. Let me try that. Not too sure if it's going to work now, but let's hope that it does happen. Okay, I think you can see this. Now, this is the definition of permaculture as was given by David Holmgren. David Holmgren is one of the co-founders of permaculture, and what he has given, this is one of the definitions which I really like, and I make it a point to mention it because he has put in succinctly what we as permaculturists are trying to do, and in general what permaculture tries to do, that is consciously designed landscapes which mimic the patterns and relationships found in nature while yielding an abundance of food, fiber, and energy for provision of local needs. People, their buildings, and the ways in which they organize themselves are central to permaculture. Thus, the permaculture vision of permanent or sustainable agriculture has evolved to one of permanent or sustainable culture. So as you can see, there are a few keywords here. I mean, almost everything is a keyword, but a few things that you should immediately see is consciously designed, about which I spoke the other day. Then we are looking at patterns and relationships found in nature. We are looking at an abundance of food, fiber, energy, and we are looking at local needs. So people, their buildings, and the ways in which they organize themselves, they are central to permaculture. Right. So, hope that screenshot was visible to you. And proceeding further, this is what we are actually trying to do in permaculture. What we actually start seeing is that uh, whenever we as human beings are trying to build something, it is being done at the cost of exploiting the nature. It is like I told you last time. It's like instead of working on the interest that we are getting from a capital, we are actually eroding the capital. And once you start eroding the capital, how long can you be in the game? And these are the types of things which actually start pinching you when you start looking at the world today. So in the last one, we were talking about one of the major problems that we have is the the depletion of topsoil. So let me just do another quick screen share for you. The loss of topsoil. Half of the topsoil on the planet has been lost in the last 150 years. And what they are saying is that the rest of the half would be lost in the next 60 years. We require 500 to about thousands of years to create an inch of topsoil. Now that is huge. That is huge. I mean, we are losing topsoil at a very fast rate, and the rate only seems to be getting faster. And on top of it, we all understand that it takes a lot of time to build topsoil. Now, what happens if you don't have the topsoil? Topsoil is the fertile soil which you actually require to get food and fiber, right? And you can also get energy out of it by growing appropriate plants. So once you start losing topsoil, the game is getting lost, right? Instead of treading softly on the earth, we are actually trampling on it, rolling on it, and exploiting it. That is what it has come down to, right? And this is what really starts creating an issue. Now, most of the food that we eat is in terms of annuals. The amount of annuals that we eat is huge. Most of our diet is made up of things like wheat or rice and stuff like that. And once you start losing topsoil, your fertility base is being lost so fast that it is very difficult to grow such crops. Now, if our diet was dependent on trees and nuts and stuff like that, probably we would be slightly safer. But it is very hard to change your diet. It is very hard to get used to that kind of stuff. And now, because of the lack of topsoil, we are losing huge amounts of fertility, the fertile base that we have, and growing of crops for either for food, fiber, or for energy starts becoming trickier and trickier and trickier. Now, you compare this with what nature is doing, right? And last time I was giving you an example of a forest, because forest was what which gave the inspiration to Bill Mollison, co-founder of permaculture, to actually start looking at the world in a way where he could design our systems in a way which functioned like forests. Now, just imagine a forest. There are definitely lots of different types of forests, but one of the picture that usually comes to our mind is of lots and lots of trees and lots and lots of animals, birds, and butterflies. If you just close your eyes, you will be able to visualize a beautiful forest in your head. And just look at the leaves are coming, the trees there, the leaves drop down, and the dropped leaves, they start rotting. They are food to certain animals. The leaves which are rotting, they also become food to some other fauna. So there is macrofauna and microfauna which are both working together, and then you have microorganisms which are coming up and taking those rotted leaves. And what is happening is that there is a huge, so to say, a web which is getting created of animal interaction, of bird interaction, animals with trees, trees with the microfauna, and the birds with the trees, birds with the animals, and birds coming for fruits, some animals taking fruits to some other place. And what you start seeing is a web. You start looking at a web of interconnections, and that is what makes forest so vibrant, so fertile, and so sustainable, because it is able to get all that it wants. Just imagine the umpteen number of connections which are happening. We might think of a forest of being just made up of trees, but anybody who's been to a forest or has really thought about it, you'll be finding out that it is very difficult to define a forest. You can't say this is forest or that is forest, because it's the interrelationships between the trees and the plants and the animals and the birds and the microorganisms, the bacteria, the fungi, the vines which are growing there, the ground covers which are there, the fruiting trees which are there, the nitrogen fixers which are there, the timber trees which are there, all these, and maybe some water bodies which are there. All these are together, along with the climate which is there and along with the rain which is falling. It is excellent interconnection of these things. And you know what happens, that when you have this beautiful interconnection, when you have this beautiful web, what starts happening is that, let's say that you have only two elements and they are connected like this. Something goes wrong and the connection snaps. But what happens when you have things connected like this? One thing breaks, the web is still there. Another thing breaks, the web is still there. So the web continues to exist despite some or the other setbacks. And that is the beauty of nature. So if you remember that last time I was talking to you about sustainability, another key thing that we need to understand about nature is resilience. Right? Nature has resilience. And it is this type of resilience which actually makes the system so good. Right. Now, just imagine that there is a lot of wind which is coming towards a forest. Right. Now, today, definitely the wind will be carrying a lot of topsoil. But along with that, what else do you think the wind will be carrying? It will be carrying a lot of detritus matter, small organic matters, maybe dead flies, maybe dead insects, beetles, and stuff like that. And what happens when it comes to the forest? Is going to come, and it is going to come here. It is going to get a bit of opposition. It is going to go up and maybe go onto that side. A bit of it comes back, swirls back. But in this process, when the wind slows down, whenever wind or water slow down, they stop carrying what they are carrying. Right. So this is a forest. The wind comes, it slows down, it drops what it has. When once it drops what it has, and what it has is a lot of fertile matter, lot of good organic matter, that is what it is happening. Now beautiful stuff starts happening, and that is that fertile soil is now there at the edge of the forest, and from there the forest starts expanding. Right. Now, just look at the beauty of it. It is a system which is sustainable, it is a system which is resilient, and it's a system which is expanding just based on its own interconnections and the intra-connections. Right. It is such a good system that it can generate its own rain. Lot of us have this. That's what we are usually taught in schools. Is that whatever rains that we get is the water, that is the water vapor that comes from the seas and from the oceans, right? A lot of us don't know uh, that by doing scientific tests they found out that most of the inland rain, right, maybe near the coastal areas, it is the oceans, it is the seas which are actually giving the rainfall. But as you come internal, as you come to the interiors of a landlocked mass, you would be finding that it is forests which are giving us the rain, right? So a forest, right, we imagine it as full of trees and all that, but at one stage it was small seedlings, small seeds, seeds which are there in the ground, small seedlings, and slowly they start growing. As they start growing, they accumulate a lot of biomass, they build their fertility, they start inviting more and more animals and birds and stuff like that, and slowly the system turns out to be this huge complex web. Now, why I'm telling you all this is that, can we do something like that? Can we partner with the nature probably, or can we be what to say? Can we cooperate with the nature so that we can also be shareholders of this kind of abundance? So that is the vision of permaculture, right? We want to tread softly. We want to get our needs, but we don't want to disturb the ecosystem which is really providing us all these things. And we want to create systems which are sustainable, truly sustainable, not falsely sustainable. We want things which are really resilient, because today when people talk about climate change or people deny climate change, right, we can see that at least in Hyderabad, it is January, but it is getting hotter, and we had a very short duration of winters. So if it starts becoming hot right in January, you can just imagine how it is going to be in March and how it is going to be in May. And if we have a delayed monsoon, how it is going to be in July. Right. So the temperatures are on the upward trend. The rainfall pattern has changed, is what we have been observing. Last time, luckily, the monsoons did not fail, so to say, but the gap between each shower event was more than a month or so, and so lots of farmers had issues because they had put crops depending on the rainfall, thinking that it's going to rain, but it didn't rain at the appropriate time. So when you look at some of these calculations that we talk of, that okay, we Hyderabad is supposed to get 750 mm of rainfall or 800 mm of rainfall, we also need to understand that it is not just the total average. We are also looking at how it is spread, and it is rather the problem that we are having with the spread of the rainfall, which actually creates this concept of so to say drought. Because you might have the correct and average annual rainfall, but still the crops won't grow because they need to have water at the correct point of time. So in this kind of a scenario that we are facing today, uh, what should we do? Right, we need to look at a lot of things in a very different light, and that is what permaculture aims to do. Now, another concept before we get into the concept of weeds, right? Another concept that is really enjoyable because of the way in which we think of things in permaculture is the concept of pollution, right? I was talking a bit about pollution the other day, and let me just talk a bit more about what that is. So let me just do another quick screen share. Yeah. So this, before I talk about pollution, this is a very important principle in permaculture, that is produce no waste. In nature, and especially because we have been discussing quite a bit about forests, what you see is that there is nothing such as waste. And this again is a very unique concept to all of us who are accustomed to throwing out half of the stuff that we buy, because half of the stuff is usually the packaging for what we buy, so that half is thrown out. And I spoke about how we don't know what to do with many of the things, but in nature it is not like that. It is all interconnected. So the food, so the leaves, they become food, they become dung, they get into the soil, they become fertility. They are again taken up by the trees, they again become the trunk or the leaves or the twigs or the branches, right? This time a bird might come and eat it, and it becomes a part of that bird. Now the bird might be eaten by another animal, and now that becomes a part of that animal. So you see that there is a flow which keeps on happening in the nature. There is nothing like a waste where we don't know what to do with it. Right. Nature does not have a theory that I don't know what to do with it, so let's keep it aside. No, no, no. Everything is a part of something or the other. This is a very, very unique concept to most of us because we don't know what to do with half of the stuff that we have. And it is something because of the lack of which, we are actually creating further and further and further problems for us. For example, we buy clothes, right? Now, some of us might be pretty conscious about some of the things that we wear and how they are made, and are they made ethically or not, and are the workers getting paid properly, or were forests destroyed in making it, and stuff like that. Because some of the organic soaps that we all think that, yeah, we should be using organic, they are made by cutting down forests. Now that is not what you want, right? So similarly, when we are thinking about clothes, right, we might be buying something which is made from organic cotton and stuff like that. But if we stop using that cloth, right, it is energy which has been locked into it, and it is an energy, and if we throw it, it might degrade after some amount of time. But if some or the other kind of chemical has been put on it, it is going to take a lot of time for it to happen. And today, because of this concept of fashion, that there is a trend which is there. So trending is the new word. You find it on Facebook, you find it on YouTube, and people are supposed to be with the trend. And once you start following that trend, what starts happening is that you end up buying lots and lots of clothes which you really don't require. A good amount of something which is properly stitched, or something which is made properly, is going to really last for quite a long time. But if you are in some of those trends, what happens is you have accumulated a lot of clothes which probably you don't want to wear. And today, a lot of those, at least in places like America, end up in landfills, right? So we are accumulating a lot of stuff into the landfill, and we don't know what to do with it. So that is what is happening. So this concept of waste, why it doesn't occur in nature, can be said off in can be told in this way, and that is, pollution happens when the output of an element, or we can also call it a system, cannot be accepted as an input by another element. Okay, I'll keep this slide for some time till I talk, because I just wanted to go through it. That is, waste or pollution is created when the output of an element cannot be accepted as an input by another element. If it could be accepted as an input, it would not be waste. It would not be pollution. So, when you look at it from that point of view, it is so easy, right? We just need to have an output for it. For example, there is there's a common joke that most of us have, that we buy new clothes for festivals and we wear them. Usually we wear them on very specific occasions, and then slowly it becomes a part of our daily wear. And then after that, it has to be discarded from the daily wear, so it becomes probably a towel. And then it is too coarse for us even to use it as a towel, so it becomes something with which we can remove the dust from tables, chairs, books, and stuff, because in India we get lot of dust, right? So we use that, and then we might use it as a cloth for mopping the house, and then it gets degraded even more. And then maybe you are just cutting it into thin strips and maybe using it in a small fire torch that you have for burning something. So there is a graceful degradation that happens, and at each stage we are just trying to connect it to something else that we need to work with, something else that is required. And wow, we have some use for it, and it is not a waste, right? But how many of the things that we that or the systems or the elements that we have today, can we say that we are able to use them in this way? So let me show you an important figure, right? If you see, it is difficult to see from where it is starting, but go towards the coffee bean. That is my left side of the screen. So you have coffee beans which are coming from the coffee plant, right? Hopefully you have traced where the coffee plant is. Now, if you are not careful enough, you would be finding that a lot of what a coffee plant can give is actually considered a waste. I think it's less than 1% or something like 0.4%, which actually makes up as the coffee bean, right? The rest all is considered a waste. Now, understand this very well, that it does not matter whether the waste is organic or inorganic. A waste is a waste, right? And the classification of how we call something as a waste, one is that you've looked at that it can't become uh, an input to something else. The other thing that you need to look at, the other thing that you need to think about is also very important. That is, oxygen is good. Yeah, oxygen is good. We all require that, right? But in what quantities? At one point of time, there was so much oxygen in the atmosphere that the earth actually burnt. And it is at that point of time that your metals and other stuff actually became oxide so that they could trap the oxygen. And that has now become a part of the earth's crust, or maybe it goes even deeper. But oxygen is good, but only in a specific quantity, only in a specific ratio, only as a part of a total composition. The same with carbon dioxide, the same with anything else. Right. So it is always a balance that we are looking at, rather than saying that, okay, this is organic, so it is not a problem. No, it can be a problem if we are not appropriately taking care of it. Just imagine having a huge pile of dung. Right. Now, dung is good. We can use it in farming, is what most of you will say. But having so much of dung concentrated, that is the key word, concentrated at a particular place, even if you remove that dung, it is going to take some time for the soil to actually become better because of so much of nitrification which has happened there, and it is probably going to stink. The same thing when it is distributed is something else, but when it is concentrated, it's a problem. The same is the problem with your septic waste. It's a very good human manure. If you can use it appropriately by treating it, it's a very good human manure. However, it is just the concentration of it because of which we have to close our noses whenever we are passing through any septic tank or canal or open drainage systems. Right. So just because coffee is a plant and coffee is good and we might be growing it organically, that does not mean that we are not creating pollution. To stop creating pollution, we really seriously have to look at how it can be integrated with the other elements that we have. And this is what this picture is showing. So I'll quickly share that. If some of you are thinking that why did I remove it, that is for telling you this thing, right? Let me just share it. Right. So now you can see that coffee plant is giving coffee beans, and definitely coffee beans can be made into coffee, and coffee we can have it. Whatever is not being used as a part of coffee, nowadays in places like Starbucks and stuff, you can actually get that, and again you can either put that into your compost or maybe you can give it to plants. So there is no waste loop which is coming from there, because that is again becoming a part of the life flow, the flow of energy. Then a coffee plant will give you some substrate, right? And now that can be given to earthworms, and earthworms can be a part of the chicken feed, right? And similarly, you have shiitake mushrooms which can be grown on the substrate which is created there. Shiitake mushroom again. There is some waste substrate which can become a part of the cattle feed. It can become a part of the pig feed. So you see that at each stage we are trying to involve nature. This is a very important part out here, that we are trying to involve nature so that we can partner with it and we can get the benefit. So you have a pig feed, and pig gives manure, cattle also gives manure, and now that can be given to a digester. Digester can give you biogas. Biogas can give you heat, which again will help in the production of your shiitake. So biogas will can give you energy. Similarly, your digester can give you fertilizer. Fertilizer can go into garden. From the other loop, what we can do is that we have water, wastewater, uh, which can also be added to your manure of cattle and pigs, and that can be given to digesters. So the water is required by coffee plant. The water, some other water can also be added here. Now, just keep this figure in mind as a concept. What we are doing at each stage is that we were looking at each element, and by looking at each element we are trying to look at its inputs and outputs. This should actually start giving you an idea as to how we think of design in permaculture, right? This is one of the ways that we look at. So we are because produce no waste is a principle that we have in permaculture. We are really trying to apply that, and in this scenario we find that the input of one can be had from the output of another system. So output becomes input, and the output from this goes on, and like that what we are doing is that we have finally created soil, right? We are finally feeding the soil, and the soil is again going to feed back into your coffee plants, right? So at each stage we are just trying to uh, take the energy and convert it, shift it, convert it, shift it, and just try to keep it all within a system where we can manipulate it, so to say, and can trap it, so to say. Manipulate is sort of has negative connotation. You want to trap it, not that it has a but it's slightly positive connotation. We trap it in such a way that we have a good control over it, right? So when we start looking at systems in this way, that is when we can actually start getting rid of pollution. Now, very close to the concept of pollution is another concept, and that is the concept of work. Work, we define work in permaculture as an output of an element, again, element or a system, can be taken as an input by another element, right? So, what we are saying is that there is an output from an element which can be taken as an input by another element. However, because we have not placed the elements correctly, we now require energy, effort, or labor in connecting the output from that element to the input to another element. Okay, could be a slight tongue twister out here, but you'll understand that. What I'm trying to say here, or what rather permaculture is trying to say, is that uh, what can be done is that you have cows, let's say, and even if you don't have cows, you would be knowing, or you have cattle, buffalo, or whatever you have, you know that the dung or the manure from it is useful. Okay, it is useful where it is useful for a lot of things, but let's say that we are particularly looking at it from a farming point of view, and we really want to incorporate it into the farm. Now, if you go to most, I mean, I have been to lots of farms where I've seen that they have a very nice little tidy cattle shed, taking very good care of the cattle, trying to feed them the most appropriate things and taking good care of them. And then they have a farm where again they are trying to do it in a chemical free way. However, the cattle shed is somewhere else and the farm is somewhere else. And so what starts happening is that somebody needs to go to the cattle, collect its dung, and bring it here and appropriately process it, or maybe just dilute it or whatever, and put it onto the ground here. Now you see, cattle shed was giving an output of dung which could be taken by the farm. However, because they were maybe not placed correctly. And design is all about placing elements correctly. Because they were placed incorrectly, what happens now is that you have to do work, right? That is how we define work. Oh my god, I have to do work. And what that work is, that you have to go and get it from there and put it here, right? Rather, a system could have been designed where most of it would have been automated, so to say, right? Without the use of high tech technology. I'm not talking about that. You can just place your cattle shed at a slightly higher elevation, or maybe it is on the high point of your property, and whenever you are washing your cattle, the water automatically flows down into your fields. You could have designed it somewhat like that. And that is what the lack of such a planning or design is what brings about the concept of work. So if you look at this neat little drawing, you can see that how appropriately they have placed their elements. For example, biogas plant will give energy which is required by the house, but biogas plant needs to be near the house. Otherwise, you'll be spending way too much money or way too much effort in trying to connect the biogas from where it is being made into your house, where it is actually required. In a similar way, a biogas plant also needs to be near the cow shed, because otherwise you'll have to again put in a lot of effort in bringing the dung. Then again, you want to give your grass, it could be slightly free roaming, and it could be a mix of free roam and cut grasses. But if you have your field somewhere else, getting that napier grass from somewhere out there till here is going to be a huge issue for you. So what we need to understand here, and what we need to really look here when we are talking about the concept of work, is that we are trying to keep things, arrange things, place them in appropriate locations so that we don't incur work, right? So pollution happens when you have an output which cannot become an input to another this thing, right? So understand this, that we are having some emissions which are coming from our cars and stuff like that, which we can't help with. We can't use it somewhere else. That is what is called sin pollution. And work is when an system or an element can take the input, but you have placed them wrongly. And because you have placed them wrongly, you now need to do the work. So work and pollution, if you just think about it, we really want to have zero pollution, so to say. I mean, we can tolerate a bit of work, but pollution is something which you don't want, because pollution is also making you lose the energy which was so generated. I mean, if you have something which has an efficiency of 15%, what does it mean? It means that the rest 85% energy is getting waste. Now you are not either paying or either generating only 15%, right? You are producing the whole 100%, out of which only 15% is being used. So you would not want to be in such sort of a dynamics where the efficiency is so low, and therefore you don't want to lose out on the energy, and therefore you don't want pollution. Again, you would really want to have zero work in the ideal condition where you can really integrate things. But I think most of us as humans, we really want to do something. We can't sit still. So let's have a bit of work to do. But you, in a very ideal condition, you want the systems to be so well integrated that even the work really reduces. So coming now, I mean, now you can see that why I was talking about produce no waste. I was talking about work and pollution, because weeds, yeah, we are coming to the topic of weeds. Weeds end up taking a lot of energy or labor, and they make farming difficult. That's what the general consensus is. I mean, you want to grow tomatoes, but you get into your field and there are a lot of weeds. So the weeds are thorny probably, or they are sticky, and maybe they scratch you based on the kind of leaves that they have and the kind of the stems that they have, and you don't want to work there. And then you need to remove that. For that, you might need to hire some labor, and labor costs money. Already the profit margins are very less for most of the farmers, so they have to do the weeding themselves, and all this is labor, effort, and energy. And this is something which we all know is going to a waste, right? I mean, you're getting something, you don't want that, and now you have to remove it, you don't know what to do with it. And that is how the whole problem starts. Okay, so now can we do something about it? I mean, saying something is problematic is pretty easy, but is there a positive solution? Is there a positive thing that we can do about it? That is what we need to think about, and that is what we are going to discuss now. Okay, but even before we start calling something as weed, okay, let's first talk about plant, because weed is also a plant, right? Okay, there's no difference between a plant and a weed, apart from how a human being is looking at it, probably, and probably a human being of that place is looking at it, right? A weed for somebody could be food for someone else, and therefore the amount of respect is going to be different. But before we get into all that, let's look at what are the general requirements of a plant. Let's just look at that. Okay, so let me do a quick screen share. So this is a beautiful photo from DJ's farm. This is purslane, perhaps not edible, but still has lovely flowers, looks good, and a nice ground cover, so to say. So what a plant in general requires is sunshine. Yeah, it requires sunlight, right? At least a couple of hours for it to grow. Then it requires moisture. uh, don't get confused between plant requiring water or moisture. What it requires is moisture. You actually put a plant in the water, it's not going to like it, and it might die out of root rot. Then definitely plant requires some space to grow. It will occupy some space, some physical space to grow. It requires fertility, because some or the other fertile base, if it is not there, it can't grow, because it requires those nutrients to grow. And then definitely the cause of it all, it requires seeds, because it's from seeds that you are going to get the plant, right? It could be weed, it could be plant, but right now just let's just stick with the word plant before we start calling it a weed. So what is a plant doing? That is what is a big question. That is what is one of the miracles, so to say, right? You have sunlight, and you have a plant. If there was no plant, what would happen? There is a lot of sunlight, and we all say that the source of all energy is sun, and that is extremely true, right? You look at fossil fuels, you say that the world is running on fossil fuel. Well, fossil fuels are also made from plants. Okay, at one stage they were also plants, and plants are again fueled by the sun. So whichever way, whichever loop you take, you have to come to sun. For example, you say that he help me do this. Now that he is defined by or is existing because of the food that he ate, and again you take it back, you try to go to the beginning, it is always going to be sun, right? But what is a plant doing? The most awesome thing that a plant does is that it can take all that diffused energy that the sun is giving, concentrate it, and give it to us as food, to animals as food, right? To lots of other uh, participants in nature as food. And that is one of the most awesome things that plants do. Right? Almost everything that they do is awesome, but just think of it, that all that energy is there, but you can't do anything with it. So they are that particular element which creates a favorable edge for us. But anyways, more on edges later. Maybe DJ is going to talk more about edges. But however, uh, it is so important that we start looking at plants from that point of view. And once we start looking at it from that point of view, and we try to look at how plants evolved and how and what is really happening, you will find out that a plant should be doing some work or the other work. It should be performing some function or the other in the ecosystem for it to survive, to exist, to reproduce, and exist yet again. It has to perform some or the other function, right? So definitely we've seen that food is one of the main functions that it is doing, and because it is doing that, it continues to exist. So when we are looking at plants, right, what we are looking at is storehouses of energy, right? And these storehouses of energy are what we can catch, because based on that we can actually catch and store the sun's energy. Now this is yet again another principle in permaculture: catch and store energy, and nobody does it. Maybe they do better, things could be better, but nobody, in my opinion, does it better than the plants. You've got solar panels which give you a lot of energy. uh, Try comparing that with a tree. Your solar panels don't work in the night, but your trees do work in the night also. They are growing, they are growing, and they are growing. So you can harvest them whenever you want. And when you go and um, make fire out of some of the fuel timber, you are using up the stored energy. So you see that how nature, not just it is not producing any waste, it is catching and storing energy into itself. And that is another, yet another principle in permaculture that we would also want to apply in the kind of designs that we are doing, right? So plants, awesome things, catching and storing energy, right? Including the weeds, right? So you can now get a hint as to what I'm trying to drive you towards, but this is something really, really important that of what plants do. Now, now that we have this kind of a basic understanding of what a plant generally does, also remember that not just it stores the energy, it is also performing some of the other ecological function. So keep remember these two as your watchwords as we go forward, right? Now let me now talk about weeds. Okay, let me now start using that word weeds so that you can now start understanding what I'm trying to tell you. You, if you are a farmer, you have a piece of land, right? You can see that there will be different types of weeds which are coming on your piece of land. But if you really want to understand more about weeds, try to do a few small experiments. What I'm going to suggest, maybe you can do all of them, or maybe you can do a few of them, but at least try to study that. And that is, take up a piece of land, and what you should do is that separate it into four parts. And in that four parts, what you should do is, let me just show you a figure so that you can understand better. Have a part of it compacted, right? Let one piece be compacted. It is really rolled down upon. Maybe you're using JCBs and tractors really to compact it. Then you have another piece of land which is tilled. So you get a tiller and really till it, and maybe do a bit of rotavator also, so that it is fine, almost like a talcum. That's what people try to do, but do like that. In another place, if something is growing, just burn that by using use fire and burn that. And another place, do a bit of over watering. Try to keep that in the watery condition, right? Now if you do this experiment for a decent amount of period of time, what you will start observing is that different types of plants will start coming in different these different areas, these four different areas. Different types of plants will start coming, and you would be seeing that in a land which is heavily compacted, you will be seeing that plants which have roots or tap roots which can actually break that hard pan or that hard soil, only those will be able to come. See, there is huge amount of seeds which are already there in any piece of land, right? There are about 100 200 types of seeds which will be there per cubic square foot, is what many people say. And uh, not all of them will not all of them would prefer germinating, but based on the condition, a few of them will germinate. So if you have compacted the land, only those which can actually spread its roots will be able to survive, because they have to break that pan, right? Similarly, you try to have really loose soil. Okay, when you have loose soil, what happens? You would be getting plants which would actually want to hold the soil together, right? Think of the fire, right? You burn a piece of your land. What are the plants are growing on it? What you have done is that you have created a large source of potash, right? Now the plants which can take up that potash are the ones which are going to come. And if you have waterlogged your piece of land, you will be seeing that those plants will be coming, which can aerate the water so that rotting is prevented, or that more of oxygen is induced into the water. Basically, you want aerated condition. That's what the plant will try to do. So when you start thinking of this, you should already you will be getting an idea as to why are plants or weeds in our case, why are they behaving in such a way, right? Why is it that on a compacted soil, you have something which is trying to break it, and in a loose soil you have something which is trying to hold it? So why is that happening? And once you start really looking into it, really start investigating it, you will find out that nature is actually trying to have a sort of succession, right? When a plant grows in a compacted area, it can survive. So it grows, it is going to spread its taproot, send the other roots, and what it is doing is that it is trying to create pockets. Now next time it rains, the water is now going to infiltrate, right? Now the plant is trying to help itself, but it is help repair the land, by because now the water can go inside, and so the soil is no longer compacted. Slowly, slowly, slowly it is going to become better. What was happening at one point of time was that whenever the rain was falling, because it was compacted, there was almost pure runoff. Now that runoff has stopped, and the soil is becoming better, right? So you can see it from one way, that only that particular weed which can survive there is coming, but on the other hand, that weed itself is paving way for other things, right? Once the soil starts becoming loose, other things will actually start coming into it. Right. Similarly, when you have a loose soil, what happens? Plant requires soil, right? It requires the fertility from the soil. It needs to hold on to something. And when you have a soil which is actually, whenever it rains, the water can take away the soil. You will have plants which will desperately try to hold on to that part of soil so that they can survive. But now what they are slowly doing is that they are bringing a sort of tightness, they are trying to bring a sort of semblance to that extremely loose and extremely tilled soil. They are trying to hold it back together. They are trying to do that, right? Similarly, you have too much of potash, not many things can survive that. But those plants which really require, or which can really take that kind of potash, they are going to come up there. So they are going to come up there, they can take that potash, and now once one iteration has passed, the amount of potassium has reduced. Then another iteration passes, the amount of potassium further reduces. And after some point of time, the extra potash is no longer there. Right. Again, if you go into waterlogged soils that I was talking of, you will be seeing that waterlogging is going to create anaerobic conditions, and that is going to have its own issues. So you have plants which are trying to actually put in air into the water. So each time, uh, see, we are talking about the soil, the same type of soil, essential, the base material. We have tweaked it for this experiment, but we are talking about in the same climate, with the same kind of rainfall and same everything. We can see that different types of weeds are coming just so that sort of natural succession can happen, and the overall quality of the soil becomes better. Now this again also takes you back to the concept of topsoil. Now, because topsoil is so important, and even nature knows that it is so important, it is trying to make topsoil, it is trying to save topsoil. And that is why that until unless you are doing something like really compacting the land, or some sort of that, or maybe always putting up fire so that no weed comes, or maybe putting up things like herbicides and weedicides, what you are going to find out is that I mean, nature will always try to bring something or the up. It will try to grow something or the other. It will never want to keep a piece of land bare. It will always have something or the other growing, because that's how topsoil develops. You do not want direct UV attack, direct sunlight touching the soil, or for that matter, even direct water falling onto the soil. You want the water to hit the leaves and then slowly go down, right? And if we are not able to understand that, right, what happens is that we will end up making mistakes. So nature is trying to drive us towards something. Nature is trying to repair the soil, and we need to understand that weeds are facilitating that, because most of the crops that we have, they won't be able to survive that kind of a condition which is existing in your soil, that is lack of nutrients, or lack of soil texture, or too much compaction, or over accumulation of particular minerals. Most of your plants won't want to, the plants that you actually want to grow as crop, they would not like that kind of stuff. They are really pampered crops. So that's why we start giving the name weeds as pioneer species, because they are the pioneers. They can go there and they can start changing the base condition so that other things can start proceeding it. Now, one of the examples that I heard in my PDC and I tell my students is the concept of succession that we have seen out here where I live. For example, I can see lots and lots of Cassia auriculata, Tangedu as we call it in Telugu. And the flower is the state flower for the state of Telangana. Beautiful flowers, yellow flowers. Now that is a nitrogen fixer. And based on the kind of rainfall, the kind of pattern that we have, more than the grasses, we actually see this coming up. And this also is not really preferred by goats. So even if the goats are going, you still have lots and lots of clumps of Cassia auriculata. Now, Cassia auriculata is a nitrogen fixer. So most of our soils do have a lot less nitrogen content also. So what happens is that, so the condition is favorable for nitrogen fixers to get into the soil. They are the ones which can actually grow. It has the hardiness to survive the kind of climate that we have here, the lack of rains for extended period of time, and it can stay there. And repair the soil. Now, once that starts happening, slowly the condition of soil becomes better, and then you have things like acacias dominating. So you have the next succession after cassia is acacia, and acacia with those thorns, right? Now what happens is the soil has improved. Acacias are again dropping in a lot of biomass, probably fixing nitrogen. There's good amount of nitrogen in the land for the next succession to take place. Now, in our area, we'll be finding that some bird, or maybe due to the flow of the water, neem, right, Azadiracta indica, the seeds of that would actually be flowing and getting stuck at the base of your acacia, because it has roots which are going down. And if you just observe any acacia, just near that, near its base, you'll be finding that there is a bit of growth and all that. And it's kind of dense out there. So the neem seed comes there, it gets stuck there. It has good protection from excessive sun. It has protection from the animals, because some of your animals otherwise would eat it away or trample it, because it has thorns. Now, no animal would prefer coming too much inside into an acacia. So it has got predator protection, it has got sun protection. Because it is near the roots, it is slightly moist because of all the shade, and good fertile soil is also got accumulated near the base, near the roots of acacia. So now neem can germinate. So we see neem tree coming out in some places from where acacia is growing, and slowly acacia is going to go down and you'll see neem, and like that the succession keeps on happening. It is based on the climate that you have, it is based on the human interaction that you are having there, so natural and human interaction and the climate, and that is going to decide the type of succession that you have. But the point that weeds are pioneers, I think, should be abundantly clear to you. They are setting the ground for something new, right? The other thing is, you have, let's say you have some other nitrogen fixing plants, maybe shrubs or maybe some kind of grasses or something of that sort. It could be anything for that matter, not really nitrogen fixing. But what you see is that if you start to have animal interaction there, probably not something as hard as goats, but that's also okay. But something which is a bit more soft uh, to the land. Let's say we have cattle. Now cattle comes and eats a bit of the grass or that whatever shrub which is growing there, and then it poops. It gives the dung, and now uh, that dung is going to be on the soil, right? It's going to be on the ground, and there are going to be things which want to eat that dung. There's going to be some dung beetles and stuff like that. They are going to take a bit of dung into the soil, and slowly that dung is going to become almost function like a compost, and uh, a bit of soil has now repaired because of this action, right? So that is one way that can happen. The other way is that some of the weed which your animals eat, whenever some of the other leaves are eaten or pruned by the animal action or also by human action, what you see is that the roots also self prune themselves, because roots and shoots, they work in tandem. So because the roots are there, the shoots are there. If the shoots are not there, the roots also don't need to be there. So they also can self-prune themselves. And now that organic biomass, right, that organic matter now becomes a part of the soil. So that is another way that you are actually adding organic matter into the soil. The other thing which happens is that if there is no animal interaction and there is no human interaction, that plant is probably going to stay for a couple of years and then probably die down based on the type of weed it is. If it's a perennial weed, that's a different thing. If it's an annual weed, it's going to die down. And all that mass is going to now be a part of the soil. So you have added a lot of soil biomass into the soil, right? So even in that case, you will be finding weeds to be extremely beneficial. Another thing that you would be seeing is that if there are, you will be finding that there are typical weeds which come based on the mineral or the chemical composition which is there in the soil. There have been good extensive studies to see that what type of weeds come based on what type of soil composition is there. So as a farmer or maybe as an enthusiast, that is a nice way to understand what the soil has and what it lacks, instead of really going to the agriculture department to find that out. And you can have a more genuine information, so to say, because plants can't be cheated, and so plants will be knowing exactly what is happening out there. For example, sorrel. If you have things like sorrel, they generally mean that you have they can provide you with calcium and phosphorus. Right. What they do is that even if you have some of these plants in some of these minerals in very diluted quantities in your soil, these weeds, they are going to spread their roots. They are going to get mine that mineral, and they are going to make it a part of their body, and through their leaves and through their stem, when they actually die out, they are going to make those chemicals, make those minerals available to you, to the soil, so that the plants which come after that have that. Similarly, fennel. Fennel can provide minerals like copper, potassium, sodium, and sulfur. Right. So there are good studies which have proven that these things are going to concentrate in appropriate way, uh, in an appropriate way. Uh, the minerals that you would be wanting, which are deficient in your soil, and now they are going to provide that. So what they are doing is that they are balancing out the imbalances which are existing in your soil. So when you start looking at some of these things, what we are seeing here is that weeds are performing the ecosystemic functions, which otherwise are very very hard to do. Right. Otherwise, you would have to bring in that chemical or that mineral from somewhere far, maybe get fertilizer and probably add a few more things which were not required. And because now you have added, you will be introducing new types of weeds. So nothing of that sort. Weeds are trying to really repair your soil. Okay. What another thing we observe is that weeds, uh, the type of weeds that you can get, for example, in a climate like ours, in Hyderabad, where we have wet and dry kind of monsoon, extended periods of dryness. There is a distinct monsoon period. Because the plant has to survive or the weed has to survive, what it does is that it puts in uh, woody stems. It puts woody stems because it does not want to get desiccated so easily. Whereas in a condition where you have too much water, you will be finding that there will be more of herbaceous material. You won't be having thick woody stemmed weeds. So lots of varieties of weeds are there. Just to classify them, just to say a word weeds actually is doing injustice to them, because depending on the type of climate that you have, the amount of rainfall that you have, and also depending on whether you're on the uplands or you're on the lowlands, uh, the type of weeds that you are going to get are going to differ, because what remedial action is required here might not be required here. So here different weeds, here different weeds. So you have this whole spectrum of weeds which are performing these awesome ecological services, so to say. Now, some of you might know a bit of history, some of you might not know, but huge amounts of forests near Vijayawada to Visakhapatnam and in many other places, they were cut down for making boats and other arms and ammunitions for the World War. And India actually lost a lot of its wealth in that way. And today, you would be finding a lot of thorny plants out there. Now, it is one thing to say that thorny plants they are not really required. Some people start calling them as invasive species and all that. But to be fair to them, they are the only plants which can survive there. And that's the only reason why they are there. Right, the kind of salinity which is there, or the kind of acidity or alkalinity which is there, only those kind of plants are strong enough to survive, and slowly, if they are allowed to, they are going to make the whole place better. For example, uh, you go to a piece of land and you see that there are lots of thorny plants out there, and I'm talking about this thick thorn, this length of thorn, right? That you actually feel that a person can die if he gets stuck in the wrong place with that kind of a thorn. You'll be seeing that thorn. It's an indicator that the nature is giving you, that don't touch me, do not touch me, because I am in a very 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 fragile state, because there has been too much of goat herding which has happened there, or something of that sort, which has really robbed the other plants, and only the plants which are thorny are able to survive. So weeds are actually telling you the conditions of the soil. They are a response to the condition which is there in the soil. So they are very good indicators for all of us out there as permaculturists or farmers or enthusiasts wanting to learn more about nature, as to what the nature is trying to communicate. And that will provide you valuable clue as to what should be done next on that piece of land, and how can we appropriately rejuvenate that land. What can we do for that? the plants there are going to give you the direction, right? Because it's that intelligence which is working out there. We just need to tap into it to see that what exactly needs to be done, and we are on our way to abundance. Okay, so uh, a lot of there have been a lot of civilizations which have been pretty sustainable, and they have worked in tandem with the nature, really looking at natural patterns to understand what is going to happen next, or to know what needs to be done. For example, there are farmers who can really say that, okay, this it is going to rain in a few days, or it is or maybe there is going to be a drought. So there's a lot of so to say ancient wisdom. We can call it as tribal wisdom also, because lots of tribals also have this, that they can really look at plants and maybe the flowering of particular plants, or the dropping of fruit by some, or rotting of some fruits, and they can say that, okay, this is the particular reason that this is happening. And that, again, I mean, we don't really find any use for those plants, but I mean, for us they are weeds. But just some of the incidences, that some of the phenomena that you can see there will give you a very good clue as to what is going to happen next. For example, hypomia, one of the types of hypomia, you would be seeing that based on its flower, how much it is opening, and how the plant is, how the petals of it are really opening, the morning glory plant. uh, you will be able to, I mean, people who know, they'll be able to predict whether it's going to rain or not. Similarly, it is not just with plants, they also can see it based on the animals and how they are behaving. But that is the kind of vital clues that nature is providing. And for a farmer, that is valuable information. Now, this kind of knowledge was there probably even a generation or two generations back. These days, farmers really have lost that touch with that kind of science. And today, um, there's a new name which has been given to it. It is called as a pre-sage biology, where scientists are trying to find out what are those things, because reports and weather models and climatic models are very difficult to model, and making predictions based on that is pretty difficult. Rather, here you have a time-tested way of telling whether it's going to rain or not, and there is a lot of science which is out there which we are not really aware of. But if we start really observing, really start getting back to some of the old literature which is there, and really start thinking how they were planning, because some of the cycles of drought, or famine, or floods, they are pretty cyclic, so to say. Every 20 years or every 18 years, you'll be or every 100 years, something or the other happens. So how were people at that point of time prepared? Because they had far less technology than we had, and far less machinery, or probably no machinery. So if they have to work with 1 or 2 acres of land, even in a day, it is very difficult. Forget about hundreds of acres, they can't. So those clues, how are they able to get those clues, so that they could appropriately set the systems up, so that they could be benefited by this kind of a knowledge. So that again is an interesting thing about weeds. So they give us those vital clues about the weather, about the climate, and again, climate change, there or not there, I would really want to know when it is going to rain in my area, so that I can take appropriate care for the land, and have the appropriate things ready, appropriate seeds ready for my piece of land. So uh, weeds can provide us with that also. Now, any plant, weeds, as we were discussing, they put in lots of shoot matter, but as I was saying last time, there's also a root matter, right? And almost equivalent to the amount that you see above, there needs to be down, or at least a percentage of it needs to be there. A huge percentage of it needs to be there for the plant to be stable. And definitely in the case of weeds, where it is really trying to survive, right? Because of the lack of resources. Now, what happens in any plant is that, as I was talking about forests, it is not just that the plant is looking at itself. It is also looking at the entire ecosystem and trying to partner with other things in nature so that it can be of benefit for them. And one of the things that we have uh, understood to a certain extent, there is still a lot of science that needs to develop so that we can understand that. But it is the role of bacteria and fungi, it is and nematodes and the other soil microfauna, which actually is the reason for fertility. So now we have a very new way of looking at soil fertility. Soil fertility is equal to soil biology. So when we are talking about fertility, definitely we are talking about minerals, the nutrients, so to say, which a plant requires. But more often than not, it is not just that. To take the minerals, plants take the services of bacteria and fungi and other things. The other soil microbiota, the services of that have to be taken. Why would bacteria and fungi help plants? Well, those microorganisms help plants because plants give them sugars. So plants will tend to have the good bacteria, the good fungi, the good microorganisms. It like to be surrounded by that because they are helping them bring minerals and stuff from other places. Right. And coming to the topic of that, fungus, so to say, fungi. It is probably the largest organism in the world because of the way it is spread. It can extend over several hundred kilometers, so to say. If you don't compact your land, it will be there underneath your soil. And for it to survive, it requires sugars. But why would plant give it sugars? Because fungi can travel several kilometers. They can send out information and transfer the nutrients from there to here, right? And so there is a good symbiosis which happens between them. Now, what happens if you remove the plant? This is the important question, right? What happens if you remove that plant or a weed or whatever? What happens is that the good microbes don't have food, right? And the bad microbes will start to dominate. So the next time you want to go out and plant something there, you have a land which is full of bad microbes. So if a thing like wheat can grow in all the seasons, probably it makes a lot of sense to have that grow. Depends on what actually you are planning to do with your land, and we'll be discussing that in the second session. But just as an information, this is something which we should keep in mind, that we really don't want to disturb that cycle, because then again we have to bring about the good cycle, right? So bacteria fungi is another good bacteria fungi. They are the ones which actually help you in your soil development. They are the ones which actually protect your plant from pests and diseases. So a lot of new insights as a humanity we are getting on soil science, a field which is really developing, because they say that there are some several million types of microorganisms, types of bacteria in a teaspoon of soil. That's huge. That's huge. And we have what, named about 20 or 30 of them. Not that we need to name all of them, but still, that is how nascent the whole subject is. So we are every day we are probably getting better in soil sciences, and so we need to be careful that we don't end up taking the wrong steps. Now, uh, there are lots of weeds which are used in medicines. Okay, a lot of weeds are made from Ayurveda medicines, and lot of medicines used in Ayurveda are made from what we call as one second. There are lots of weeds which are used in Ayurvedic medicine preparation, right? For example, you have phyllanthus, you have lots of other stuff which are used. You have abutilon, right? You have abutilon indicum, you have phyllanthus niruri, and you have so many things which we classify as weeds, but they have lots and lots of medicinal properties. Now, for example, a weed like abutilon is called atibala in Sanskrit, and it is really very ati bala. It has a lot of bal. Okay, it is very powerful. So something which is powerful for us, something which is good for us, is definitely also good for the land. So you never know what the weeds what are helping you out in, not just for the soil but also for the humans. And you know what, most of the plants that we have domesticated today and we are eating them, they are not going to survive even one day in the forest. They can't. They are highly domesticated, highly cultivated plants. But you know the source for them? The source for them has been uh, the so-called weeds. So somebody experimented, ate that weed, didn't die. So over several generations, right, ancestors of all the civilizations and farmers from all the civilizations, and for several generations, what they have been doing is that they have been trying to naturally select, make better and better and better cultivars. For example, carrot, the original carrot, the wild carrot. I don't even think we'll recognize it as carrot. We'll be calling it as something else, right? It is not carrot for us. However, it is from that we have been able to get something which today is probably one of the favorite snacks, so to say, energy full, rich energy snack, the carrots which we all like. Similarly, most of the plants at one point of time, they were like weeds, but they were the ones which were edible. Right. They say that in the forests of near Visakhapatnam and Vijayawada, there used to be about 150 varieties of tubers. 150 varieties of tubers, and today we know what, two or three. Right. There are lots of edible things which we are completely unaware of. Now you know the best thing, that most of the troubles that we as farmers or we as human beings or as mankind have is in trying to grow those things which are difficult to grow. We can rather have easier options. For example, it is much easier to grow a fruit tree than to have an annual crop of rice. It is much more laborious to have some sort of weed grow. I mean, some sort of annuals grow. However, because of the way in which our dietary habits are, this is what is happening. So, if we keep a watchful eye out for the weeds, we might find out that there's a lot many more things, and they are much better for us. Maybe in terms of their nutritional capacity. For example, there is a big list that you can find on the internet about edible uncultivated crops. Right. So they are crops which you don't need to cultivate. Your things like parsley and a few types of amaranth and a few more things like galijeru and all that we call in Telugu. They all grow. I mean, there's a bit of rain. They grow. Where are the seeds? I don't know. They are probably there in the soil, and it's the same soil on which the car has been passing or some other people have been stamping. But come rain, and you find that coming out and perfectly edible, have very good medicinal properties, some of them, and require no sort of effort. Right. So, similarly, we can have lots of variety of greens that we can eat, and instead of sticking to just a few of the greens that we know today, and most of the things that get sold because of because of the marketing dynamics or the distribution dynamics, are the ones which can be grown with a particular ease, and which can be transported with a particular ease as well. However, uh, that does not mean that they are really good for your health. There could be better alternatives. There could be better varieties. There could be better stuff. Okay, and when you start looking at some of the things which can grow on their own, which are essentially, I mean, if you don't know, you'll be calling most of them as weeds. You won't even be knowing. Actually, there are farmers also who consider them as weeds, and they are the ones who are actually going out and removing it. Now, you might want to remove it because you feel that it competes with your plant. That's one thing, but it is still edible, right? You can remove that and eat it. But most of the farmers are also sometimes clueless that that particular thing is edible. So we need to get back that kind of information so that our dependence on cultivated crops reduces. And as I said, whenever you want to cultivate something, you are bringing in the work factor. And if you don't do work properly, you probably bring in the pollution factor as well, right? So we are just trying to minimize that, so we can look into that. So we have flowers, right? Weeds also give flowers, right? And that flowers can be used for can be will be used by the bees, by the birds for getting nectar. And then the honeybees and stuff like that, they are going to grow, they are going to put out their honeycombs, right? And we can get a lot of honey from a plant which really we found no use for. So it is, you can grow sugarcane or you can get honey, right? I hope you understand the difference. You have to grow sugarcane or you can just get honey. Which one should we prefer? Not that sugarcane is bad, but the way in which sugarcane is being cultivated these days is really spoiling the land that we have. Similarly, different types of weeds. You have woody weeds, right? Now, those woody stem weeds, and for example, Cassia auriculata tangeru, for that matter, is an excellent, is a really excellent firewood. And even when it is a slightly green, it is still a very good firewood. And actually, it's I don't know the technical term for it, but it is the one which actually sets the other things to fire. So you can actually put it, one of the first things which goes into your rocket stove or whatever stove that you're using, and it is going to generate enough heat to actually start burning some of the other things that you have put there. So it's a fire starter, something of the sort. So from something which otherwise is of, and it has beautiful flowers. So all in all, it is doing a really beautiful work. Now, if you discount that and if you don't consider that, then what happens is that whenever you want to get in the firewood, you are going and cutting down forests, right? You want to have sugar, we have to grow sugarcane. So what happens is that we start spoiling the ecosystem for it. I hope you're getting some of the ways in which we can practically apply the things that we were talking in the first half of the session regarding permaculture and how we can design systems. This is what we mean by that, that we can softly on the earth without having to walk so harshly that everything just gets spoiled by the way we behave. Coming over to a few more points. If you are really observant enough to see, you will be able to find that weeds which are growing on your farm, they will give you a clue as to what you can grow farm, right? Because if they are belonging to the same family, of that family is what we are calling as weed, and one from that family we are calling it as a crop. So now that's not the only way that you look into it, but just giving you an idea that that you can look at some of the weeds, and you can start understanding that, okay, what the weed doing, do the same. And if my crop can do the same, my crop is going to get all the advantages that the weed was getting from the nature. It is going to get all those benefits. So keeping that in view is also very important, right? Then so already we have discussed a lot of things about weeds, right? So weeds are helping you infiltrate water. They are helping you infiltrate water by sending their roots, making the soil better. They are adding a lot of biomass into your soil. They are a very good source of capturing the solar energy which we are getting, and they can be used. Some of the weeds can be used as fodder. Just like we were talking about medicines for human being, plants also act as medicines for birds, for animals, and for other things, other living beings. So if you have a dog, or if you observe dogs, you'll find that whenever their stomach is not proper, they'll probably want to eat something like grass or some stuff, so that they can actually purge out whatever is there inside them, something which is causing them indigestion or probably ill health. Similarly, you see that kind of intelligence in cattle, right? Similarly, probably with birds as well, that they are taking leaves and stuff from that. Now, if you start removing that part of the ecosystem by just saying that I don't want it, it is not something which I eat, you are going to get into problems, right? And you will be finding that you will be not getting the advantage that a bird can give onto your farm. You will not be getting the other advantages the other living beings were giving on your farm. And then farming, or for that matter growing food, or for that matter even living, is going to become extremely difficult, right? You will be finding that there are some weeds. Weeds definitely sometimes harbor pests for your crops, but on the other side, weeds, because of the way that they are placed in the ecosystem, they also harbor friendly pests, which are actually friendly predators, so to say, which are going to predate on the pests that you have. So it is not always negative about weeds. There are lots of positive things also that weeds do. And similarly, you might find that some of your uh, weeds will be used as a trap crop. You can use them as trap crop, so that instead of affecting your cultivated plant, the pests are coming and now attacking your weed. Now you'll be wondering, why would a pest want to attack the weed? Well, we are classifying something as pest and something as a plant and a weed. For the pest, it is only trying to go there where it can get better nutrients probably. And some of the weeds actually are much better in their nutritional content than what we can get from the plants. Okay, so there is this whole host of functions that a weed can do. There are a lot many more that the weed can do, and we just need to keep our eyes open, right? I'll show you something real quick. This is the life ethic that Bill Mollison mentions in his designer's manual. Living organisms are not only means but ends. In addition to their instrumental value to humans and other living organisms, they have an intrinsic worth. Right? Not everything needs to be classified as of being important to human. There is a whole web out there of things which are actually helping us out, but we don't know. Right. For example, you can make crafts, you can make baskets with some of the so-called weeds which we don't know what to do with. There is a human value for things if you're careful enough. But even if you can't directly see any human value, it has an intrinsic worth. And in the if you remember the beginning of my session, I was talking about that any plant, any animal, or any living being which is there needs to perform some or the other ecosystemic function, otherwise it will be redundant, right? So some of you have not seen this. Do watch this. It is the video is a very short video. It's known as how wolves changed the river, right? In Yellowstone National Park, what happened was that there was a lack of wolves, and 66 wolves were introduced. Once they started getting introduced, what happened was that they started creating a check on the deers, right? And deers were actually overgrazing because there was nothing to control them. So now wolves came, there was a check on the deers, and deers got threatened. So deer stopped visiting some of the places, some of the open places where they could be hunted easily. And so you found that your valleys were started regreening. And in some of the places, you saw that the growth was in 6 years, the growth of trees was 5 times, right? So slowly the ecosystem started becoming better. Because it started becoming better, you could see that things like beavers and other things started coming. Because the trees were there, the birds started coming. And because beavers were creating habitats for other animals, they also started coming. So your whole that water-based ecology really started becoming much better. Then, because of the check on the deers could not really overgraze, and because the wolves are also making sure that the forests are becoming better, they found out that the river, which was meandering too much, and the edges of it were getting eroded. There was now, because the deers could not come there as frequently, and there was a check on them. The banks stabilized. So just the lack of wolves was creating so much of an issue. The diversity was lost. The ecosystemic stability was lost. Right. So was it something that we could have guessed? If we could have guessed, we should have done it. If we can't guess, then we should keep cool. We should be silent, because we really don't know how beautifully the nature is working. We really don't know much about that. And when we don't know about these things, mm, we don't know what wrong we will do by eliminating something. So we have to be really, really, really careful before we can call something as being negative. Now, there would definitely be some of the farmers who are watching this who have actually faced problem with weeds, and it's like that. I seem to be painting a very rosy picture of weeds, and probably some of you might be feeling that how do we incorporate it practically? One thing is that how we can do something about the weeds practically. We'll be having another session on that where I'll be discussing that. So even if you are asking me, I still haven't checked the questions, but even if you are asking me some questions on that, I'll like to defer them to that, because anyways that will be discussed. And if your questions actually make a good part of the presentation on that day, they'll be included in that. So keep the questions going. The other thing is that what I'm trying to do here is that I'm trying to give you the science behind the weeds. I'm trying to give you the thought process of looking at weeds. It is not whether they are good or bad. No, first we need to really look at what they are doing, and then we need to decide whether they are inappropriate for what we want to do or they are appropriate for what we want to do. And that is what we mean by design. Now, I'm not saying that on your farm let weeds create a havoc. No, that's not what I'm suggesting. And there are some type of weeds for which probably are becoming invasive because of the way we are and because the way the weed is, and probably it has been brought from some other climate and it has no natural enemies here. So we definitely need to be careful about them. But as I was saying, that I'm just trying to give you the permaculture thinking of really understanding why at all weeds are there when we don't find any use for them. And that is what has been the intention of what I have spoken till now. And I'll just end my presentation. I still don't know if there are any question answer sessions. There might not be many, but let me just end with something really beautiful. I could have shown this on the first slide, but I wanted to have it in the last slide. This is the definition which Bill gives. Permaculture is a philosophy of working with rather than against nature, of protracted and thoughtful observation rather than protracted and thoughtless labor, of looking at plants and animals in all their functions rather than treating any area as a single product system. We are trying to work with nature, right? We are trying to really see why nature is doing that, what the intention of this session was, that how do we really see what weeds are doing and really appreciate for what they are, and then see how beautifully they can get linked to the system that we have. See, I was talking about so much about work and pollution. What has happened today is that because we don't appreciate weeds, or we feel that there is no need for weeds, many farmers are having to resort to use weedicides, herbicides, and whatnot. All these sides are being used, and what that is doing is that now those things are becoming a part of the earth, the water. They are becoming a part of the ocean. They are becoming part of the soil. In permaculture, are the most important thing. Because of the ethics, permaculture is so beautiful. It's not just a design methodology, it's an ethical design methodology. So when we talk about earth care, right, we are really talking about how we don't disturb the earth, how we keep the natural cycles intact, how we ensure that they are not disturbed by any wrong act by us. So where is the earth care when we are using those kind of chemicals? Then, yeah, and then as consumers, so to say, sitting at our home or maybe in city, we are really concerned about the pesticide which is there on the food. But I was coming back from a farm. Most of the, I mean, it's something which we have already observed. Most of you would have also had, but sometimes things strike you in a slightly different way. And I saw that farmers were not even covering themselves up when they were putting the pesticide, and they didn't even know properly. They didn't even have the technical know-how. They were applying the pesticides through that shower and stuff, and that was getting into their noses and all that and becoming part of them, and those kind of poisons. So we, even with the diluted pesticides, because we wash it and whatever, we feel unsafe. What about a person who's directly working with that poison? And they have, just like we can have some reasons as to why we are using petrol and stuff like that, they have their own problems, and they have to use these stuff. So we need to really think about that, because otherwise, where is the people care aspect of permaculture? And if we are able to appropriately look at weeds, right, all that energy that we are getting from the sun, we can probably do a return of surplus instead of just burning them outright. We can probably have very good compost piles made from. We can have very good compost piles made from all the minerals and nutrients which have got accumulated. So there are lots of ways in which weeds can be used beneficially. This talk was essentially about giving you the thought process behind it. Let me just now start looking at what questions have been received. We can, based on that, just a sec, because people do ask a few questions in Facebook Live as well. These questions I can see, but right, we have got a few questions on YouTube, and I have just the right person who can answer all your questions. Okay, so just close your eyes for about 5 seconds. Just close your eyes for 5 seconds, and your worldview will be transformed. Okay, just close your eyes.
Hello guys, namaste everybody, good morning. Just giving Sai a little bit of a break here for his voice. I was listening to all of this from my home and came here running, and it was a great talk. It was an awesome talk. Hope you all got great stuff out of it. So on anything that Sai spoke, if you have any doubts and questions, please keep them coming. I'm here to give him a break and answer your questions. Here, first let me start the answers from YouTube. First question is from my education hub. We wanted to start agriculture. Any tips? That's a great question. Um, if you don't have experience in agriculture and you want to get to do it in a non-conventional way, non-pesticide, non-fertilizer way, one of the best ways you can do that is through gardening and container gardening. Before you get your piece of land, or if you already have a piece of land, go around the land, look at the type of soil you have, what type of soil it is, then try to mimic that in a small container and try different things. And it might take a couple of years. You can keep doing this while you're already started agriculture, but doing this in containers, what it does is it gives you a lot of flexibility and freedom to understand a lot of things. I have on my rooftop, I used to have, right now my rooftop is not fully set, but I used to have a few dry land containers in which I did not water. I want to see the response of plants when I didn't water it, or overwater it, or underwater it. It kind of gets you going into the education of reading the landscape, reading the plants, understanding them, understanding the crops, understanding the potential yields, and understanding the soil structure. For example, right now I can pin down I can look at a soil and tell you whether it is very good, it's going to give a good yield for your tomato or not, provided there is enough moisture. So that's because I have played with a couple of different soil mixes with different percentages of organic matter in it. Mulch on top, 20% organic matter, 30% organic matter, 40% organic matter. I had a container just full of coco peat, container just full of compost, just to see how it all deals with things. So based on that, now when I go to my farm, I can look at an area, hold the soil in my hand, right? Smell it, and based on that, I can say, oh, this is going to rock for a sesame crop, or this is going to rock for a sunflower crop, or for a tomato crop. That's the first thing I would suggest. Do gardening, lots of container gardening and backyard gardening, and do it in a permaculture way. That is by adding mulch and other stuff. The second thing is go around your own place. Look at what the other farmers are doing. Look at how their soil is, and keep that in mind. Keep it in comparison with how your soil looks. If you have any organic gardeners and farmers around you, go observe, go look at their plants, their soil, their type of water, the amount of water they are giving. That kind of gives you a good idea to keep visiting them, especially in the first few years, quite regularly, to keep looking at the plants. Okay, this is how a tomato plant will look 3 weeks down the line if it is healthy. This is how it is going to look if it is not healthy, etc. It starts to build up a database in your mind. Your mind gets used to observing nature. That's the second thing. The third thing is go around to non-farms, that is vacant lots, creeks, a little bit of a canal that's running through. Go look at the different types of grasses and trees that are there. If you have a nearby jungle or a forest, not the government planted one, the natural one, go there and look at the kind of trees and the structure and the closeness of them, the types of trees there are, because that's going to give you an idea of how far and close you should plant what species in your own farm down the line. You might be in a heavily forested area, and if you try to convert that into normal agriculture, you'll start having, as I was talking all day, weed issues and pest issues. So understanding that. Then the last but not the least thing I would suggest is go through permaculture. Go through a good PDC if you can. Otherwise, do a bunch of workshops about permaculture, and you should have the basic knowledge to get you going. And lastly, if you want to do it for as a profession, please do go attend a few workshops, organic workshop, ZBNF workshop, permaculture workshop. Maybe if you are into if you are okay with animals, go for a chicken breeding workshop, go for mushroom workshop, go for a horticulture workshop. Just go there, because the kind of vibe you get and the kind of basic information you get kind of fits in very, very well. There are tons of very good videos on YouTube that get you going in this. I would still suggest starting with permaculture and ending your cycle of learning with permaculture, so that all that you learn fits into permaculture and works beautifully. That's my advice to somebody who are willing to start agriculture. Make sure you know why you're doing it. It's hard work. It's risky, in the sense that it's dependent on rain. If you go especially beyond a particular size of an area, market prices, the whole game. So think about it. List out your priorities. For example, for my farm, my priorities are my own food first, food for the locals next, income third, and above all these three is ecological sustainability of the landscape, where I'm pulling down carbon from the sky, clearing the skies, doing my part to reduce as much pollution as I can, doing my part in cleaning up the environment as much as I can, giving scope for lots of butterflies, bees, and insects and animals as much as I can, while still making the farm productive. That's my list of priorities for my farm. So do write them down. Next question comes from Gokul. Food plants, goats in my case, seem to do remarkably well in a previously uncultivated land, like a plot where only pioneers were growing, or where termites were consuming woody dead plant matter. During a drought, yet when we attempt to grow a different second crop after the first one, the same place, it does markedly poorly. So, do we need this cycle of pioneers followed by dry, idle termite? I understand your question. Um, the dry termite period and then plant food plants. Is this a common phenomena, or am I misreading something? What's happening here is has also to do with the types of plants you're using and the climate and the seed, particularly. Um, your ash gourds and pumpkins seem to have done probably because of the pioneers that you had before, and also maybe you planted them in the right season, and the soil was very good to that. When you shifted into other food crops, I wonder how you shifted into it. Did you rake the land? Did you plow the land? Did you just plant it into the hard ground? How hard was the ground? Most vegetables, they have been selected from weeds to be really productive. The original cabbage, the ancestor of all cabbages and cauliflowers and mustards that we have, the brassicas that we have, is a coastal plant from France, a small little plant. That one will survive very well. Now we have selected it for leaves. This one needs a little bit, it cannot survive on its own. We have to provide it some help, right? So maybe it's the soil that's not done. But your question that do we need to go fallow? Do we need to keep the land in pioneers and then idle before we crop again? No, we don't need to do that. We can grow our veggies along with plants that are like pioneers, that need not even be the pioneering weeds. Um, for example, I put in nitrogen fixing ground covers, lots of flower plants, and I leave a few weeds and naturally occurring grasses all over my gardens and plant right into them. There comes a stage when your soil is so good that you can keep on not worrying about weeds and just planting stuff into it, and it will work. It's a matter of coexisting, and it can be easily done. It's about setting up the soil right and soil biology right. And pioneer species, if you leave it to them, take quite a long time to do it, right? You want to repair your land, and so you let weeds grow. Probably for the land to get to a very, very good state, it is going to take at least 200 to 300 years. Nature works in those long time scales. Whereas if we do it, we can get it to that mark, 200 to 500-year-old mark, in about 2 years or 3 years, max 5 years, right? Where we are actively planting nitrogen fixers, phosphate fixers. We are actively planting plants that are going to attract a lot of birds or attract a lot of insects, and chop and drop them, increase the amount of biomass very, very fast, mulch appropriately. We do all these techniques to get the land to the perfect state as much as possible, as quickly as possible. Sometimes even as less than 2 years, sometimes as long as 5 years it might take, but we can get to that 100, 200 year mark in just about 2 years using permaculture strategies and understanding of how nature works and catching its principles and applying them ourselves. What I would suggest you is that make some compost. Keep adding handfuls or even pinches of compost with every seed you plant or with every planting you plant. The biology in it immediately starts to condition the soil around it and starts to quickly provide environment for better and better productivity. That's the first suggestion I would give. The second suggestion is mulching. Right? Most weeds are, they regrow, and most plants regrow. So chop them off, use them as mulch before they go into seed, etc. Got to be a little bit careful with what type of weed you're doing, but it's all right. You can just chop and drop and keep adding biomass and keep adding new seeds to build your biomass, to build your life in the soil, to build your life above ground. You can do that without sacrificing too much space. It's a matter of putting things in the right shapes. Like 4 feet wide beds are very, very good because you can double reach them, and in that you plant about a foot to 2 feet distance. Almost all vegetables can be planted. That's the range. Almost all vegetables, 1 to 2 feet of space is enough, and in the gaps you let your weeds happen, or even your own pioneer species. The last thing is, without trees, there's no fertility. Remember this. Remember this. Without trees, there is no fertility on the soil possible, theoretically. You want 1 or 2 trees that you can chop off regularly and add them as mulch. I suggest things like casuarina, neem, what is that? Ganuga chettu. That is, Avisa is good. Sesbania grandiflora is awesome. Moringa is good. Then Pongamia pinnata, Kanuga is good. 1 or 2 plants, 1 or 2 trees surrounding your property. You chop them off every year and use them as mulch is one way. I plant trees right into my garden beds and keep them chopped off at 6 feet height, and regularly keep, whenever they put out new shoots, when the shoot size is just shading out my garden, I chop them off and put them in. That's the other thing I would do. The last thing is, I would not expose my soil to the sun, especially for the summers. I will have mulch covering it, tree shade covering it for the summers. These three things should give you great because all these strategies are based on what happens naturally in a forest over the time of 500 years. We just fast track that succession. That's the second question Gokul has asked. Hope answered your question satisfactorily. Then let me see if there are any questions on Facebook.
No.
Huh?
One person asked, do you prefer firewood to LPG? Firewood is renewable while LPG is not. He has only mentioned.
Right. Who is that name? Who is that person?
Prabhakar
Bhaktula. Mr. Prabhakar has asked the question, do you prefer firewood to LPG? In permaculture, right? If you know Telugu, that's stuff like this is going to be the subject of the talk in my webinar in the afternoon at 3 p.m. in Telugu, that is, not in English. But firewood is generally about, for my understanding and preference, several thousand times better than LPG. But it depends on where you are getting your firewood, how you are using it, what kind of usage you do with it. Because what starts to happen is, the traditional chulas that people have, kumpati they are called in Telugu, open wood fires, they release all these wood oils and a lot of carbon and a lot of soot, and the people who are cooking will breathe it in, and it causes lung troubles, and it's a very well known fact. LPG does not do that. LPG does not release soot. But if you have a system like a rocket stove with a nice exhaust where the smoke is not getting into you and it burns cleanly, that is, you start getting very rich red and blue flames in your stove, where most of the carbon dioxide is, most of the wood is getting burnt. If you build those efficient stoves and you have good exhaust, and the source of your firewood is not polluting itself. That is, you don't want to clear out forest for firewood. You don't want to get your firewood miles and miles away using petrol again. But in my case, around my house and my little forest garden, that's about 100 square yards, 200 square yards. What exactly is it? 167 square yards, right? It's a small plot by the size of my house, side of my house. I have my trees growing that are firewood providing trees, that are also mulch providing trees, that are also nitrogen fixing trees. I've got fruit trees and vegetables growing along with my firewood in a small 167 square yards, just about 20 meters from where I use it. And in that case, it is like several million times more efficient, more healthy source of fuel than LPG any day. I will take that any day of the week. In fact, one of the things I try to promote is to get people to understand this. We are perfecting our rocket stove model still. Right now, a double burner model is being planned for my own rooftop. Single burner, I can do it in my sleep, no issues. A single burner rocket stove, one height, three width, ventilation, extra air. The air inlet is about the same size as the outside. I have got the formula down. Probably in a webinar, I'll share that with a drawing. But you got those technologies, then it's much better. There are other techniques to cook food, which are also very important. And in permaculture, what we say is that each function must be performed by multiple elements. Get as many types of stuffs as you can that are sustainable. You can have coal, you can have rice husk, you can have a wood stove, you can have wood chips from the carpenters, you can have cow dung cakes if there is a cow or a buffalo guy near you as your fuel. You can get solar cookers, you can get your LPG as a backup. It is raining cats and dogs, or there is power outage, or there is issues. We don't want the society to stop. The government says we will increase or we will stop your gas connections, and everybody did not have time to protest against the Aadhaar card. They had to go and get an Aadhaar card to start, to keep cooking. We don't ever want to be in such a unsustainable, unresilient scenario. So it's not just the wood stove. I have an induction stove. I have an oven, a microwave oven. I don't have a gas stove, but I still have a cylinder with one of my friends. We can share it in case of an emergency. I have a rocket stove. I'm designing a solar stove myself. I have little chulas which can burn coal very efficiently. I have a rice husk stove in my home which can also use wood shavings from the carpenter, the sawdust from the carpenter. So it's having this diversity that gives you the stability, and most importantly, the kind of outputs you get from all these, they don't start piling up. If you just have a wood stove, you are going to end up with bags and bags of ash by the end of a year. Unless you have a good place to dispose them, that starts to become a headache again. Unless you go into soap making, that's a different topic altogether. I am kind of giving you long answers, rambling on. I hope it's all right, because there are not many questions now. And so, there you go. Gokul has asked a beautiful question. How to plant continuously and get to that stage quickly? We want to mimic a natural ecosystem, Gokul. And that is a lot of leaf drop, a lot of animals and plants.
Yeah.
A lot of animals and plants interaction. If we don't want animals in our garden, of course, it's difficult to maintain them. We should get some manure going, should get compost going, and lots of chop and drop and mulch. Every time you chop off a weed or a plant, its root mass is going to get self-pruned. That is, the plant itself drops it away. That starts to building up biomass in your soil. You want to hit 35% organic matter in your soil. That's your target. And there's an easy way to find this out. You take your topsoil, below your mulch, you take soil, put it in a bottle of water, like a handful in a liter bottle, fill it with water, shake it vigorously, right? And keep it aside for a day. Come back the next day, and you will see that all these solid, rock particles, dust particles, everything has settled down at the bottom. Then you have a layer of fine particles. Then you'll have an organic layer at the top, right? That compared to this, if you take a scale and measure how many centimeters of each you have, if you take the whole thing as 100%, then if your organic matter is kind of like that, then you're in a place where your plants will never die out of thirst. Rains will be held in that soil, right? 30 to 35% organic biological matter. That's the target we are looking at. And so you keep building biomass while still cropping. Get a diversity of mulch plants, get a diversity of weeds going in the edges, which you can chop off, find out the fast growing plants for your area, and keep adding them as mulch or making compost with them. And these two will give you great results. One thing I have done is, not the fat sticks, but thin twigs and all. With weeds, I have got weeds from the surrounding areas like a couple of years ago, and I put a bed that's about 2 feet high, like that, a pile of those sticks and leaves and all those weeds in a bed. Like it was almost 3 feet high. I stood up on it, jumped on it to break the sticks a little bit. It all broken down to about 1.5 foot high to 2 feet high, and I just towards the edges and into the middle I dropped seeds. Towards the edges I put some tomatoes and chilies. It worked beautifully. The plants did do well, but over a period of time that whole thing broken down. In about a year, actually, it broke down while I was constantly harvesting and cropping into it. And the end soil was one of the best soils I could get. So that's you might want to look into things like that. When I was doing that, people were saying I was crazy, and I might be crazy, but that choice was based on observation of what is happening to stuff when people chopped off, for the road and all that, around their house and all that. They chop stuff off and pile it up. You go look underneath it, how it is. That's what I observed and made that bed. Then you asked another question. Can you mulch for small plants like coriander? Yeah, you can, but it is, I think you know the answer. If you plant coriander as a seedling, maybe you can mulch easily, or you can mulch after the plant comes up. It's not really difficult. You can mulch it, spread out the mulch a little bit, and in the middle you can plant directly into the soil, like 1/2 feet deep or 1/4 foot deep mulch is fine for coriander. We have done that. That's totally fine. But then you are planting seeds carefully. If you want to broadcast seeds, thick mulch is not the way to go. And for those, you would want compost and light mulch. That's about it. You adjust for your needs. You adjust the system for your needs. I think we have.
If there is no water, how permaculture survive in future or present? Without water, nothing will be survived. Is there any specific system for no water in permaculture? That means no rain and water.
No rain and water is quite impossible, Harivavanaya, on the earth. Right now, people say we are in water scarcity, and it's not really completely true. It's more of a water usage, cleverness, scarcity that we have. But in areas where there is no water, we want to absolutely no rain. Let's say there's no rain whatsoever. If we can get a limited amount of water from other places, like say 100 tankers of water and store it, we can sufficiently reuse it. There are techniques of using water in your gardens and your systems very carefully, where the usage of water and the excess water is returned. This is not new technology. The people on the space station, they use stuff like this, where systems are recycling water through themselves, aquaponics, greenhouses. There are technologies where the water use can be minimized to about 10 to 12% of what we are doing, and most of the water that we consume can be returned to the system, and that can be easily maintained. But all life needs water. There are no two things about it. Without any water, there is no life. No humans, there is no permaculture there. But if we are existing, and if we can get some water from outside, it's not really that difficult to use it very wisely, um, uh, and create sustainable systems. Usually the problem is not with no rain. Usually the problem is with what happens to all the rainwater when it falls on the ground, or the local river. It can be set up easily with pipes or tankers for that matter, to start it going. But then we start making sure that we don't lose water. There are about 8 or 9 different ways in which water is lost by our systems. We reduce them, we recycle them, and with very little water compared to what we have now, we can have great permaculture. In fact, permaculture is the kind of thinking we need if we ever want to do good farming in places where there is less water. One of the best strategies possible in dry lands comes from permaculture thinking. So that's what it is. We can do it in areas where there is very little water, and it's just a matter of partnering with nature. Uh, is that all?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
We have. I think we have answered all the questions, but there are two critical things I would like to mention here. The first thing is that, sorry, off topic, but how to get rid of uh, red and their larvae? How to get rid of what? I didn't understand. How to get rid of what? What is that?
Red ants, eh?
Red ants?
Is it red ants? Krishnakant, girl, is it red ants?
Red ants.
Yeah.
Uh, oh, very good question. Red ants in your containers, I believe, or even in your garden, mean that your soil structure, right? The amount of moisture in your soil is perfect for the ants to form houses, right? You want to change that condition first. The second is the food sources. Why are your ants there and what are they eating? Usually red ants come and they do their job and they move on, and some other they will be replaced in succession, and it happens quite regularly. My forest, one of my gardens has red ants. I generally don't bother with it. When I want to harvest, I just take a broom, sweep off where I want to stand, quickly harvest and get out. Other than that, I don't worry about red ants. But if you are worrying, turmeric is a brutal option, but good, better than poor hot water nonsense, right? Turmeric is good. Diatomaceous earth is good. You can get it in bags. It's available.
Amazon.
Yeah, people say boric acid and sugar. That's again, that can be done. It's brutal, but it can be done. The next thing is just get your soil mix going and change your water regime, and probably start planting more number of plants. Maybe you have less number of plants there. That's one more reason. Usually red ants come and eat, when there is a food source of a particular type of insects and stuff in the soil, and once that comes into balance, red ants usually go away. For me, red ants are there in one or the other container throughout the year. They are in this container now, some months later they are in that container, and I just don't bother about it. If it's bothering you, these are the things you can do. You can just sweep them off for the time being, and harvest and other things, or plant stuff into it. Wear gloves if you want, use tools if you want. That's the way I do it, because I really don't see a need. I have not had a bad infestation of red ants. Let me make it clear. I always had a few red ants here, a few red ants there. So I was quite happy to kind of let them be. But if you have too much of it, use turmeric powder. That works. Use diatomaceous earth as a sprinkling on the ground. That works. Or mix sugar and boric acid and keep it in a shady place, various places in your garden, and that should also help you take care of it. Uh, I heard something extremely interesting about red ants a couple of days ago. I am not remembering what it is. Red ants. What did I hear? I heard something brilliant about it, and I was like, the next time I'm going to see a red ant, I'm going to kiss it.
Was it that termites and this house?
No. Completely new for me. Completely new for me. 2 days ago I heard about red ants. Anyways, it's not striking me. It's got to do with artificial intelligence. Computers, artificial intelligence, and red ants. Some algorithmic relation there. I forgot about that. Anyways, let me not waste your time with that. No questions on FP?
No.
Oh, with all those questions answered, I have two little things to tell you. I'll quickly let you go. The first little critical thing I want to share with you guys is, if you like these webinars, please do share them, because it takes quite a bit of effort to make these, in terms of stopping all other works and sitting here. I should have been on my farm now with Sai, and Sai should have been in Bhubaneswar doing a project. Just because we want to share this to a wider public, we are here doing these webinars. So if you like these, share them, get a lot of people to watch these things, so that our efforts are meaningful. If this is not so effective, like we are reaching only 20-30 people, maybe we can do that directly out there on the streets. No, it's the number of people we want to get this critical information out to. The last webinars, Sai's and mine, have gone and reached hundreds of people, and we are thankful for all of you for that, for watching these webinars and sharing them and spreading them. Share the word about permaculture and change the world, and that's the first request I make of you. The second request I make of you is that if you have any questions, any particular questions or any particular topics, do keep posting them on Sai's website. Once we find that a particular topic is getting enough number of questions, like people might ask about food forests, or people might ask about pests, or whatever it is, we will make that into a webinar, an interactive webinar session, or make videos about it, so that we can directly be helpful to you, rather than just talking esoteric concepts in our webinars all the time. We want to change the world while giving out all the philosophical ideas of permaculture. We need to do that very, very quickly for the society to really start being what it is. Thank you for watching this. Sai is going to thank you for this. See you all. Over and out to Sai.
I know the feeling what happens when one teacher goes and another teacher comes into the class, and I know what it is. But just one word, really thankful to all of you for having listened. And if there are any doubts that you have, do ask questions. And the last thing that I would like to say is that if you know any Telugu speaking audience, those who understand Telugu, 3 p.m. today on YouTube and probably on Facebook, can't guarantee that. We are going to be, DJ is going to be talking about permaculture and society, right? So make sure that you join that, because there are lots of implications of permaculture, and with the things as broad as society, lots of stuff is going to come out. Last time DJ did a session, it was more than 4 or 5 hours long, so you've been warned. So get a bit of popcorn, have a bit of coffee, and be there, because lots of stuff, and do ask questions there, right? So thanks for watching, and till the next webinar, probably next Sunday, or maybe just after that, but I'll be letting you know that.